You're listening to The David Knight Show.
While we're talking about Al Gore, as a matter of fact, I mentioned this briefly a couple of days ago, the fact the Australian government paid Al Gore $320,000 to conduct a climate training seminar. And when he went down there, they got their first snowfall that they have had since 2015 in Queensland, Australia. One person reporting on it from Australia said, Al Gore is here in Australia to train 1,000 useful idiots on unscience, on Neolithic reasoning and witchcraft. The man with no climate science expertise and a huge vested interest in being paid by taxpayers to train people to chant consensus, and to pretend that wind and solar can stop storms and hold back the tide. These obedient fools help to destroy any conversation about science by reciting anti-science bumper stickers like, the science is settled and gravity is real. Yeah, we understand that. We understand that gravity is real. But you know what? If you want to talk about science, don't lecture me about science and tell me it's settled. Science is never settled. The essence of science, as I've said before, is skepticism. Whenever you accept every advance in science has come by overthrowing conventional wisdom. Every advance in science has come by overthrowing the settled science, because science is never settled. And when we look at this, we've got the Metro out of the UK saying the sun has reached the solar minimum. Where have you heard that before? Well, here we've had Dr. Soon has come on many times. He looks at solar activity. He says, yeah, we're going into a solar minimum. We're going to, as a matter of fact, we're fast approaching it, and now it is here, and it's going to have an effect. I mean, what kind of an idiot would think that the sun affects our climate? Well, I would be that kind of an idiot. I think solar activity has an effect on our climate, and they do too, except that, listen to the way they try to spin this, because, of course, the Metro wants to go with the establishment. They say the solar slowdown often causes temporary cooling in the Earth's atmosphere. Sadly, this is unlikely to continue because the sun follows an 11-year cycle, meaning that it will simply spring back to life in the coming years. So, they say these climate change deniers hail this cooling as evidence that the heating of our world is going into reverse. No, what we understand is that it is a cycle. You look at this and you say, well, this is just a temporary cooling, and then it's going to go back the other direction. Because to them, the heating is permanent, and it's not. It's a cycle. We're the ones who understand it's a cycle. So they say the sun leaps back from its minimum will leap back after roughly 11 years. They've seen this before. They would pretend that it wasn't happening again, but guess what 11 years is now? That's 2030. Remember, that's when the sky's going to be falling, according to AOC and all these other alarmists. And when the solar minimum starts to disappear, they'll all go, look, Al Gore was right. He was right. It's getting hotter again because the solar minimum will be ending that cycle. We'll be right back. Stay with us. Welcome back. I'm going to open up the phone lines. If anybody wants to join the program and comment on what we've been talking about or anything else, I'll give you that number. It's 888-201-2244. That's 888-201-2244 if you want to join the program. Before we move on from the climate change issues, I thought this was interesting. Of course, we've seen this mentioned a couple of times. The fact that 5G is going to interfere with weather forecasting, but not just with weather forecasting, not just whether or not it's going to rain this afternoon, but it's also going to have a big effect on being able to predict very dangerous, life-threatening hurricanes. I remember here in Texas, the hurricane that was in the early part of the 20th century in Galveston, because it caught everybody by surprise, because we didn't have the ability at the time to be able to predict hurricanes, it caused a tremendous loss of life because nobody was prepared for it. Nobody was able to evacuate. And we might have that kind of a situation again with 5G. And you know what? Just like we're talking about these medical issues and what you should be allowed to decide whether you're going to take a particular treatment or medication, they don't really care about that. And the FDA, again, never has regulated surgical procedures, never regulated implant devices, never regulated any of this type of stuff. They've never tried to regulate in vitro fertilization, yet they're saying you can't take your own fat cells, have the stem cells extracted for you, and then put back in. No, we're not going to let you do that. We're going to now expand our authority to regulate that. And when we look at, they really don't care. Well, they've got an agenda. In that particular case, the FDA is controlled by people who are part of the big pharmaceutical industry. Novartis, who bought influence with Cohen. They paid him $1.2 million, and then behold, not too long after that, Novartis gets an authorization for a $2.1 million drug. Most expensive drug ever authorized. They don't really have to go through any kind of testing because, it's such a dangerous condition that they allege that they can help. They don't have to go through this testing because it's so rare that they can't really do effective tests. They can't find enough patients that are like this. And because it's so rare, so horrible, the consequences of that, they said, well, you just need to go ahead and authorize this so we can help people. Look, I understand that. Let people make that decision on their own. We shouldn't have an FDA. We could have people who inspect for safety and so forth, and we do that at the local level with food. We don't need a Food and Drug Association at the federal level to regulate that. We've got local inspectors who can do that type of stuff, just like we've got Underwriters Lab as private. They look at electrical devices. They evaluate them for safety. We don't need to have that kind of seal of approval done by the federal government. They have no authority for that, as a matter of fact, in the Constitution. That ought to be important to us. But still, they're going to go ahead and push that, and because they don't care. And when you look at 5G and the fact that storm tracking could be turned off, not just weather prediction, but the ability to track things like hurricanes, as the Yahoo article points out, storm tracking could be a casualty of 5G. Satellites tracking water vapor in 2012 helped scientists accurately predict Superstorm Sandy's frightening turn toward New York and New Jersey, where it killed dozens of people and inflicted billions of dollars in damage. But it'll be far worse than that if it catches people by surprise, like it did in Galveston 100 years ago or so. But see, they're not interested in tracking storms. They're not interested in protecting your life. They could care less about protecting your life. They don't care about that at all. They want to track you, not a hurricane. They want to track your every movement. That's what 5G is really about. And in the same way they don't care about protecting people by giving them early warning about hurricanes, they don't care if 5G is going to harm your health either. Because, again, their only interest is in monitoring you because they want to establish the same kind of pervasive surveillance that we've already seen established in China. And they've already got the big corporations that are going to partner with them in a public-private partnership of tyranny. The Facebook, the Google, Apple, all these other people who have been complicit in shutting down our free speech, they are all going to work with them, help them to collect that information. All they have to do is just scrape it off the public sites, but they can turn it over to them as well. If that will give them more power with the regulators, they'll be happy to do that. It's one of the reasons why they pushed CISPA through. They maintained for the longest time that if you have information with your phone company or any information that a private corporation has about you, they say, well, you turn that over. And we saw that same alibi being used by Facebook. They said, yes, it is a digital public square, but the people have surrendered any privacy when they gave us that information. But for the longest period of time, they've had Supreme Court rulings that say any information that the telephone company has on you, the telephone company, if they wish, can turn it over to the government if the government asks them. The government doesn't have to get a search warrant. They just come up to them and say, AT&T, we're good buddies, and you got this bill coming up next year. We got these government contracts that are very lucrative for you. You'd like to be able to sell to us. You've got licenses to operate in these certain areas. You wouldn't want to put any of that stuff at jeopardy, would you? You want a good relationship with us? Just give us that information about David Knight. And they say, here it is. Yeah, it's our information. They play that game. Well, they could do that as well with the internet companies, but they were concerned that because of terms of services where these guys started, that people would sue Facebook and Google and other companies that had collected that information. So they gave them immunity. And it took them a long time to do that. But that's precisely what they intended to do. That's why they wanted CISPA passed. They tried it a lot of different times. ACTA, SOPA, PIPA, CISPA, multiple times. Finally, they changed it to CISA, and they got that passed because they want that information turned over. And so you got Commerce Secretary Wilbur Ross. He's over NOAA, the weather agency. He's warning that critical Earth science data could be lost because of 5G. The Navy is saying the same thing. Yet the FCC went ahead with an auction of spectrum to 5G suppliers. And because it's all about big money, big business. See, there's $275 billion in it for these companies. That's what they invested in 5G. And already, more companies have pledged more than $2 billion for rights to use the frequencies, bidding in an auction that's being run by the FCC that concluded on May 28th. You got AT&T, you got T-Mobile, all these other ones getting rights for all this stuff. So there's a lot of money there for these corporations. They don't want to stop that, even if it means they can't warn you about hurricanes coming, even if it means that the 5G is going to cause an increase in cancer tumors, which we already know. Early tests of rats showed that heart and brain tumors increased in male rats. We've had many long-term studies about other types of cell phone radiation showing the same type of thing. But this is going to be, they don't care about any of that stuff because the corporations want the money, the government wants to control. All right, we've got several people lined up on the phone lines. We'll take your phone calls when we come back. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Let's go to Gerald in North Carolina. You want to talk about the border, Gerald? Go ahead. Oh, he's not there anymore. Okay, well, let's go to Corey in California Solar Cycles. Go ahead, Corey.
Good morning, sir. It's really nice to talk to you. I've been listening to you for quite a while, back when it was still the real news with David Knight.
Wow, thank you.
We're really glad to have you back. I was really happy to hear that you got through your heart attack okay and the surgery and stuff, and just really, really great to have you back into my morning routine.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you for listening.
Absolutely. You really piqued my interest when you went into the solar cycles. I'm actually part of a community of observers that we watch the sun. We read the sun basically on a daily basis and all those different signs, coronal holes, coronal mass ejections, and also with solar flares. And it's really interesting. You can learn this all in a half hour with free resources. I don't like to plug on other people's radio shows, but it is a free resource, a free website. It's a compilation of basically all of the SOHO images, as well as, the KP index and things of that nature. It's spaceweathernews.com, and you can go there, and you can basically get all of the telemetry data of the sun as it happens, and of course, the history of like 2 or 3 days, depending on your graph. Really quick, interesting note: if you go back to the hurricanes that hit Louisiana and Texas and North Carolina and the East Coast, if you look at the precursors to before they hit land and they got really, really strong, you'll notice that there were solar flares that were happening on the face of the sun, and that actually intensifies hurricane activity. So for these, we're also the community suspicious observers. We're against the whole consensus argument and Al Gore. We laugh in their face with empirical data. So this is all empirical.
I wish that you could somehow get a hold of, because Al Gore, he's making money off of this. He's got blood and gore. Literally, that's the name of his corporation, to trade carbon credits. He'll be the first carbon billionaire if he can get this scheme to go through. But people like AOC, and the people who follow her, to them, these storms that are happening, they don't have anything to do with solar flares like you've seen, the correlation, solar flare, a couple of days later, you got this big storm. No, to them, it's me driving around, it's the exhaust coming out of my tailpipe, or it's the fact that I'm eating beef and we got to kill all the cows.
Yeah, absolutely. And also a good thing with the sun, too, is you can predict earthquakes. With 80% accuracy, you can actually predict earthquakes, outgoing long-wave radiation from the Earth, the connection to the sun, the magnetic connections to the sun. This can all be predicted. There are, of course, the government and those scientists that are in control of consensus don't want anybody to know about this kind of stuff. QuakeWatch.net, spaceweathernews.com. Thank you, David.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, we have to use this as an excuse so that they can tax us, so that they can create a pretense, a global problem, so they can give us global taxes to fund a global government to transfer money from us to people like Al Gore and so forth. They have to have a big problem so they can have a big solution. That's really what's behind this. All right, let's go to Jacob in Missouri. You want to talk about infighting, I think? Infighting on the right? Go ahead.
Hey, how's it going, Dave?
Doing good. Thank you for holding. Go ahead.
Thank you. Pleasure to talk to you, man. I've been listening to you since you guys started the radio show with Dave Knight Show.
Thank you.
I just wanted to kind of bring up the fact that I love Alex Jones. I love Owen Shroyer. I listen to them every day, but for whatever reason, and I'm not trying to nitpick or anything, but they never really go back to the previous radio show that was going on. I've never really heard them give examples to like one of your guests that you had on, I think yesterday or the day before. He was talking about the states coming up with the banking system that would allow us to actually get back to a federalist constitutional republic.
Yeah, that's very important. Yeah, Richard Proctor. Yeah, we're going to have him on again because he's got a lot to say. He's got solutions. He hasn't just identified how we've gone off of the plan, the Constitution, and violated the oath that they've taken, but he's actually got some really good solutions. So we're going to have him on as a regular guest. Yes. Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, yes, it is a big problem. You gotta figure out what the problems are, and then hit the problems and yell and keep talking about the problems. But you really got to eventually come to a solution. And that was the best solution I've ever heard as far as getting back to a constitutional society.
That's right. That's right. And it is surprising for a lot of people, I think, if you go back, you look at his books, and he breaks it down line by line, or section by section, article by article. It's very interesting to see what a constitutional government would look like and how we've got nothing at all like a constitutional government. It's a great plan. It's not perfect, and we could change it, and there's a process for changing it, but they don't care. They just ignore it, as he pointed out from the very beginning. They had a big fight about how many elected representatives we're going to have, and immediately the guys who had even written the Constitution said, never mind. We put 30,000, then we'll make it 50,000, and then just arbitrarily change it at will going on. Well, that's all the time we've got. Sorry to the people who are still on hold. Thank you for calling in, though. We'll try to do this again probably tomorrow. And thank you for listening to the rest of you. That's it for our program.
You're listening to The David Knight Show.
We're bringing back one of the biggest fan-favorite formulas we've ever offered with even better ingredients. Ultimate Bone Broth. InfoWars Life is proud to bring you a powerhouse bone broth formula to help push you to your limits. This incredible formula will help you get the most out of your workout with the power of ultra-high-quality bone broth, one of the most popular health trends on the planet. Built with more than 7 different superfoods and crucial compounds, Ultimate Bone Broth will help support your healthy muscles, digestion, tendons, and ligaments, while also supporting your body's fight against free radicals. This incredible chicken bone broth formula contains time-tested ingredients such as turmeric root, chaga mushroom, goji berry powder, bee pollen, and alfalfa herb powder to support your body. It's time to experience what Ultimate Bone Broth can do for you. Get Ultimate Bone Broth now at 50% off.